going to stay in the game. Comic Relief does Fame Academy, tomorrow at 8 on BBC One.
They haven't pulled a sickie in years. They never reach the end of the day without burning legs. They've lost friends, jobs, and lovers. And the only people who understand them want to beat them. What's it all for? The only thing that matters. The European Indoor Championships. See the top international athletes at their peak in Madrid, Saturday at 4:25 on BBC Two.
Sir, phase 1 of your master plan is now complete. Our crack team of entertainers has finally been assembled. We have the idol, Andy Scott Lee, the diva, Javine, the class act, Tricolor, the comeback queen, Gina G, and finally, the pin-up, Katie Price, codename Jordan.
Ah, good work, Miss Kaplinsky. Now, whoever they choose, I cannot lose.
Making your mind up. This time it's serious. Saturday at 5:45 on BBC One and throughout the week on Radio 2.
This is BBC One in the South. Now the 10 o'clock news with Huw Edwards and Jerome Sale.
New evidence that asylum seekers in Britain suffer violence and abuse. Undercover BBC reporters witnessed the serious mistreatment of immigrants in a British detention centre. The private company which runs the centre says it has suspended 12 workers from frontline duty. Also tonight, Tony Blair says the foundation stones of a Palestinian state have been laid. Millions of drugs on the way to combat a potential flu outbreak in Britain. And Michael Jackson steps into court to face the prosecution case.
Here, Jermaine's penance, a Premier League footballer, is jailed for his second drink driving offence in a year and pushing for compensation why she feels the council should pick up the tab for a new bike.
Good evening. Asylum seekers held in a British detention centre are subjected to violence and racial abuse, according to evidence unveiled by BBC journalists. One reporter went undercover at the centre, while another escorted asylum seekers and immigrants around the country. Both the centre and the transport service are run by Global Solutions Limited, which said tonight that a full investigation was underway and that more than a dozen employees have been withdrawn from frontline duties for the time being. Our home editor, Mark Easton, has the details.
With humanity and dignity, that is how immigration detainees should be treated, says the Home Office. But secret BBC filming of staff from the biggest private security firm used by the Immigration Service reveals evidence of racial, physical and sexual abuse.
Get out of the bed before I do you some damage.
The mental state of this detainee is a cause for concern.
You don't want to do it because I'm white. Do you think that you're not going to do anything because a white person told you what to do? Well, I'm afraid you're wrong. My great-grandfather shot your great-grandfather into the country up here for 200 years. I'm not being...
Oakington is not a prison. Detainees may have committed no crime. Indeed, many say they came to Britain to flee torture. Some staff here, though, brag about inflicting pain on them.
We've had knock 7 kinds of shit out of them. I mean, you take a little bit of frustration out of them, but you be very careful, you know what I mean?
Right, I'm with you.
You can tweak the old hands, you can give them a bit of bleeding pain.
Right.
You know, but on certain places, be very careful when you've got immigration around you.
This officer is often alone when he takes detainees to the airport and boasts of what he sees as the sexual perks.
I might be escorting a female, right, alone or something like that. Or I had one who was back and I just put my hand down her tits one time. Nobody was looking, I was in the corner, right?
So get them in the van.
Evidence of abuse relates to a small minority of staff, but systems for dealing with it are failing. In what appears to be an overtly racist practice, Eastern Europeans are routinely sent to the centre's secure unit as escape risks. The official Home Office monitor inside Oakington seems to defend the policy.
We would never publicise it.
Why is that?
Because it might be seen as being sort of racist, right?
Oh, okay.
Today, the company which runs the services featured in the programme said it had asked a team of former police officers to conduct a thorough inquiry.
We will make inquiries, we'll conduct this investigation that we've already launched. We've taken 15 members of staff off frontline duties in order to assist us with our investigation. And we will inquire fully into the allegations that have been put to us by the BBC and obviously from what we've seen in the programme.
The Home Office declined to be interviewed for the programme, but in a statement, Government Minister Des Bryan said, "I will consider what further action may be appropriate once I'm in possession of the full facts. Detention and removal is an essential part of effective immigration controls, but it is vital that it is done with humanity and dignity." Mark Easton, BBC News, at the Home Office.
And you can see a Real Stories investigation of the immigration system tomorrow evening. That's Detention Undercover at 9 o'clock here on BBC One. The prospects for peace in the Middle East are the best for many years, according to the American Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice. She was in London, along with the new Palestinian leader, Mahmoud Abbas, for talks on creating an independent Palestinian state. The Palestinians made a number of pledges, including reforming their political institutions to prepare for self-government and overhauling their security forces to control militant groups. The international community also promised financial support for the Palestinian economy.
Keep edging the Middle East towards peace. That's Tony Blair's ambition. One method, rally global support to strengthen Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinians' best hope for eventual statehood. With new leadership and commitment from Washington too, ending the Israel-Palestine conflict at least looks possible now, even if it's far from certain.
Much of the poison that we want to take out of international relations has swirled around as a result of the failure to make progress on this issue. The benefit, if we are able to succeed, will not just be felt by the Palestinian people or the Israelis, vital and primary though that is. It will be felt by all of us.
Not least by Mr. Blair himself, who's made the issue top priority. The Palestinian leader has started in office strongly, even if he couldn't prevent last Friday's Tel Aviv suicide bombing.
We are doing everything we can to preserve the peace and the truce, and also to implement our commitments towards the roadmap.
And to help him do that, United States General William Ward will lead an international team. His mission to advise Palestinians on streamlining their security forces and squeezing the militants. Washington is radiating optimism.
The prospects for peace between Israelis and Palestinians are the best they've been in many years, and this meeting reflects our determination and that of others in the international community to seize this opportunity for peace.
But this was a meeting with only one party to the conflict, no Israelis here today. They insist the Palestinians must dismantle militant organizations, not simply lay foundations of statehood, before full peace negotiations can resume. So will today's London meeting have made a difference? Well, probably yes. The quest for peace, which sometimes looks hopeless, will need much more work from both sides. But a Palestinian state could be, just could be, a step closer tonight. James Robbins, BBC News, Westminster.
In the Middle East, the Palestinian Authority says reforms are happening. Mr. Abbas, elected in January, has already had some success in reducing violence. But amid the very cautious optimism, there's still great uncertainty about what will happen when Israel withdraws soldiers and settlers from Gaza later this year. Our correspondent James Reynolds has travelled across Gaza to test opinion.
In Gaza, a strong man has to show up with some panache.
Hi, Colonel, how are you?
Hello, how are you?
Good to see you. Good to see you. So these are your men?
Yeah. Jamal Qaed's one of Mahmoud Abbas's new commanders. He runs the Palestinian security force in the borderlands of southern Gaza.
This is the Israeli position. You can see it just with the flag.
He's been brought in to do one key job: to stop Palestinian militants from attacking Israeli positions.
Colonel, what happens if your men are here and they see a carload of people come out, perhaps with a rocket, a Qassam rocket, which they want to fire to a Jewish resident? Yeah, militants. Yeah. What happens? What will your men do?
They do all. They put all the efforts to stop them and to prevent them to launch from here.
But the people of Gaza want more than that. They want change. They're fed up of seeing their leaders promising reform and then failing to deliver. The government has never done anything, says Usama. They've been weak, and some have been corrupt. This time, though, there's a prize for reform, and it's right on the horizon. By the end of the year, the Palestinians will inherit Israel's Gaza settlements. How the Palestinians govern Gaza after Israel withdraws may define just how far the peace process ends up going. The better that this narrow strip of land is governed, the more reform there is, the better the chances of full-scale peace talks and eventual Israeli withdrawals from occupied land in the West Bank. Still, we found no great hurry to prepare for the future. This Gaza mayor runs a town right next door to an Israeli settlement. What to do with the extra land doesn't really concern him. We can't make any plans to take over, he says, because we don't know exactly what's going to happen. And no one really does. But tonight the thought is clear. Get reform going here, and independence may just get closer. James Reynolds, BBC News, Gaza.
Health officials have ordered almost 15 million courses of an antiviral drug, enough to treat a quarter of the British population, to combat a potential flu pandemic. Last week, the World Health Organization warned of the danger of a global outbreak sparked by a potential new strain of Asian bird flu. Our medical correspondent Fergus Walsh has more details.
Whenever the next flu pandemic comes, these pills should save lives, perhaps thousands of them. The antiviral drug weakens the effects of avian flu and can even prevent infection in the short term.
I think the antivirals will give us time, and that's quite important. It will give us another option as well. So when the first wave comes, like a tsunami wave, there will be more than one wave, but when the first wave comes, we will not be completely overwhelmed. We'll have the antiviral drug. And then we can get ourselves together, make vaccine, and get more antiviral drug for the second wave.
The government's plans accept a flu pandemic is inevitable at some point. That's why it's stockpiling 14.6 million courses of antiviral tablets, enough to treat 1 in 4 people in the UK, at a cost of £200 million. In the event of a pandemic, the government would consider school closures and cancelling public events like football matches or concerts, all to limit the spread of the virus.
So who'd be first in line to receive these antiviral tablets? Well, health service staff, of course, anyone in daily contact with the flu virus. Then transport workers and others involved in essential industries. And finally, vulnerable groups, such as patients in nursing homes.
France and the US are investing in millions of doses of prototype avian flu vaccine. But officials here say it's impossible to create an effective vaccine before a pandemic occurs, because we won't know which virus to target.
It's wrong to say that we're behind other countries. We're very much in the lead, and no country in the world has got a pandemic flu vaccine that can be stuck into somebody's arm at the moment. All are at the early stages of looking at how one might be developed.
The growing threat from avian flu is plain to see in Vietnam. We reported from villages where the disease has jumped from birds to people. It's caused 15 deaths there since December. If and when the virus finds a way of spreading between humans, then the next pandemic will be upon us. Fergus Walsh, BBC News.
The Conservatives say they could back the government's controversial anti-terrorism legislation as long as it's changed and replaced by the end of the year. They've been opposing plans for control orders, which could see suspected terrorists detained without charge. Well, let's talk to Mark Mardell, who's at Westminster. Mark, this latest Conservative stance, what's the thinking behind it?
Well, you see, the Conservatives have a bit of a dilemma. Do they vote for a law that they think is bad and dangerous, or do they oppose it and then get accused by the government of being soft on terror, not allowing these important new laws through? What they've come up with is a bit of a wheeze, which says that they will back the law as long as there's something written into it that says it dies off, is killed off immediately in November. So that means that whoever's the government at the time, whoever wins the general election, has more time to think of a new scheme. So that sort of gets them off the hook, but not quite, because what it's emerged tonight is they'll only do this if they get a whole host of other amendments that are being discussed down there in the Lords through as well. So it doesn't quite get them off the hook.
And what do the other parties make of this wheeze, as you put it?
Well, the Liberal Democrats are pretty cross. They think the Conservatives are throwing away a rather strong poker hand at the moment and that they had no need to do this right now. And Labour are really quite cock-a-hoop. They say that the Conservatives have made a massive climb down. And I think we're going to hear a lot more of this in Prime Minister's questions tomorrow.
Indeed. Mark, thank you very much. The British television journalist Martin Bashir has been giving evidence at the trial of Michael Jackson. Pop star denies several charges of child sex abuse, but the prosecution alleges that he gave young boys alcohol and showed them pornographic videos. From Santa Maria, California, Matt Fry reports.
Day 2, the spectacle continues. Today, as it will every day, with the arrival of the defendant. Michael Jackson shielded from the elements, protected by bodyguards, and more defiant than ever. Enter the supporting cast. Tom Snedden, the irascible prosecutor who's been trying to take Jackson to court for over a decade. Next, Thomas Mesereau, attorney to the stars, who's portraying his client as the vulnerable victim of a proven band of swindlers. Focusing his attack on the accusers, the lawyer told the court that the two boys behaved like unruly children while at the Neverland Ranch. Far from being plied with alcohol by Jackson, they broke into the wine cellar and then ran amok. At one stage, turning on the giant Ferris wheel and throwing stuff at elephants and people. Since the children's DNA was never found in Jackson's bedroom, the attorney said the molestation charge is fiction. He admitted that his client read pornographic magazines, but denies showing them to children. So is Jackson more sinned against than sinning? Not according to the man in the middle. Martin Bashir, first prosecution witness and British journalist. He made the controversial film in which the singer acknowledged sharing his bed with children.
A grown man to be
Living with Michael Jackson.
How do you respond to that?
The documentary that triggered this case, shown in court today, and producing a reaction from everyone. The jury was mesmerized. At one stage, Jackson even rocked in his chair to the sound of his own music. But this afternoon is now all about Martin Bashir, the first witness. The prosecution had hoped that he would describe the bizarre life at the Neverland Ranch. The defense is busy trying to discredit him as a journalist. The case continues. Matt Fry, BBC News, Santa Maria, California.
And still to come on tonight's programme, why this small Gulf state is set to become an indispensable friend. And where did the crowds go? Charles has started his Australian tour. The world's most valuable energy deal, worth £7 billion, is set to bring much-needed supplies of natural gas to Britain as reserves in the North Sea start to run out. Construction has just begun in the Gulf state of Qatar on the biggest single energy project ever realised. The country will soon supply 1/5 of Britain's gas. Our business correspondent Rory Ketton-Jones has been to Qatar, which is set to be one of Britain's indispensable friends. Well, I'm very sorry we've lost the sound on Rory's report. We may get back to it in a few moments' time. In the meantime, Mary Wragg, whose husband Andrew is on trial for the murder of their son, has told Lewis Crown Court that he had talked of killing the boy if he thought he was suffering. 10-year-old Jacob was terminally ill with a rare degenerative condition. Andrew Wragg denies murder but admits manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. Anita McVeigh was in court.
Mary Wragg was the main carer for her son Jacob and struggled with her emotions in court today as she described learning about his illness. Jacob had appeared normal as a baby but was diagnosed with Hunter syndrome, a progressive genetic disorder. Sufferers rarely live beyond their mid-teens. The court had already heard how Andrew Wragg told police he had smothered his son at their home in Worthing and asked them not to judge him before knowing all the facts. It was claimed today he had problems coping with Jacob's illness and hospital visits. During one visit, he spoke to the mother of another seriously ill child. Recalling the conversation, Mary Wragg said, "I clearly remember Andy saying to her that if he thought Jacob was suffering, he would put a pillow over his face." Mrs. Wragg went on, "I felt it was something he said because of the difficulty of the situation, the fact he felt powerless to deal with it." This is the Ragg family home where Jacob died. Mary Ragg was asked to describe how her son was that day. She said he was strong, taking into account his difficulties. He took biscuits from the biscuit barrel, put a video on. He was happy and active, she said. Andrew Ragg returned home after working in Iraq as a bodyguard 2 weeks before Jacob's death. Mary Ragg, who recently divorced her husband, will give her version of what happened that night when she returns to court tomorrow. Anita McVeigh, BBC News, Lewis.
And we'll go back now to the world's most valuable energy deal in Qatar. Here's Rory Ketlin-Jones.
Here's the future source of much of Britain's gas, not the North Sea, but the Arabian Gulf. This platform off the coast of the tiny state of Qatar is tapping into the world's biggest gas field, and it's about to play a vital role in meeting our energy needs. A lavish ceremony this week as the start of a giant project was marked by Prince Andrew and the Qatari royal family. More than £7 billion is being invested to bring liquefied natural gas, LNG, to the UK. So British consumers will soon have to rely on gas from 3,000 miles away. British householders shouldn't be worried that the lights will go out.
Yeah, I think if their lights goes out, it will not be because of our gas. I can assure you that supplies will be there in time. We promised everybody we will deliver the first shipment in the winter of 2007, 2008, and we have every reason to believe that will happen.
The project involves a massive expansion of this plant, where gas is chilled to minus 160 degrees. In its liquid form, it occupies just 1/600th of its original volume. They may have an awful lot of gas here, but just a few years back it wouldn't have been economic to put it through an expensive process and then ship it all the way to the UK. But now, with North Sea reserves dwindling and the wholesale price soaring, the sums do add up. So in a few years' time, LNG will play a very important role in keeping homes heated and the lights on in the UK. A fleet of giant new tankers will bring the gas to Milford Haven in West Wales. But what's the danger of a powerful new supplier pushing prices higher?
This project is going to supply a fifth of the UK market. That means plenty of new gas coming into the national grid, and that means increased competition. Increased competition obviously means a better deal for consumers.
What is clear is that Britain is getting more energy from an unstable region, though Qatar is one of the Middle East's more tranquil corners.
It is moving towards democracy, and it is probably the state that is leading the drive towards democracy. So from a political stability, Qatar probably offers one of the best choices for the UK to actually get a stable supply.
A country half the size of Wales is turning into an energy superpower, and as Britain's reserves run low, it's becoming Qatar's best customer. Rory Ketlin-Jones, BBC News, Qatar.
The Prince of Wales is in Australia on his first official visit to a Commonwealth country since the announcement of his engagement to Camilla Parker Bowles. Republicans in Australia are using the forthcoming marriage to reopen the debate about their country's links with the monarchy. Prince Charles began his tour in Perth, from where our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell sent this report.
It may be a respite of sorts from all the questions about his wedding, but this is hardly the visit of a man who will one day be welcomed as Australia's king. As the royal motorcade swept by, the crowds were notably absent.
This is a joyous, spine-tingling welcome, the sincerity of which could not escape the royal couple. Joy.
50 years ago, of course, it was all so different for the monarchy here. Then tens of thousands of Australians turned out to see their new queen. And even 20 years ago, the crowds were still there in large numbers to welcome Charles, accompanied then, of course, by his first wife, Diana. Cut to 2005, and the right royal can still captivate Australia. This is Mary Donaldson, a Tasmanian who last year married Prince Frederick, the heir to the Danish throne. They too are touring Australia, presenting a modern, glamorous image, appearing together on a TV talk show. Even die-hard Republicans are impressed.
Mary in particular, but Frederick too, because he's had the good sense to marry an Australian. There is an endearing quality about them, and I think people do see them as a glamour couple.
By contrast, Prince Charles and his bride-to-be have yet to endear themselves to Australia. Given that one day they're due to become King and Princess Consort of Australia as well as Britain, that's a matter of concern to constitutional historians.
If Charles became King of Britain, I think it would open the issue very much whether he should also be King of Australia, and the divorce and the remarriage have not helped in that regard, but maybe he doesn't care.
So how does the Australian government feel about its infrequent visitor becoming Australia's king? Deputy Prime Minister John Anderson chose his words with care.
It might be a while since he's been in Australia, but he's not been someone who hasn't come to Australia several times. He has.
The Prince and his officials don't seem to want to get embroiled in the fundamental issue of whether he will be King of Australia. So far as they're concerned, the less said about that during this visit, the better. Nicholas Witchell, BBC News, in Perth, Australia.
Football now. There have been 3 FA Cup fifth-round replays tonight. Southampton won 3-1 at Brentford. They'll meet Manchester United in the next round. And Blackburn beat Burnley 2-1. The game between Sheffield United and Arsenal is currently goalless and has gone into extra time. James Munro reports.
Not many Arsenal fans would recognise the strip, nor some of the players wearing it tonight. Arturo Lupoli is just 17, and Arsene Wenger was forced to bring him in for Thierry Henry, one of 9 regulars injured or suspended. Sheffield United almost made the most of their good fortune inside the first minute. Andy Gray with the perfect cross, Michael Tong with the imperfect finish. From then on, Arsenal had most of the first half possession, but United frustrated them at every opportunity. That pressure intensified after the break. Cesc Fabregas went closest of all to settling the tie in normal time. Into injury time, and United could have stolen it, but John Harley's header was tipped over by Manuel Almunia. The two sides have another half an hour to settle it. Otherwise, they'll have to decide it on penalties. James Munro, BBC News.
And the closing stages of that match are over on BBC Two right now if you want to see them. And just a reminder that if you're a digital viewer, there's more on 10 o'clock News Extra, including the full interview with the Chief Medical Officer, Sir Liam Donaldson, on the dangers of bird flu. OK, we'll be back a little later, but now it's time to join our news teams across the UK. Bye for now.
Good evening from South Today in Oxford. The Premiership footballer Jermaine Pennant is in prison tonight. Magistrates have jailed him for 3 months after he was caught drinking and driving for the second time in a year. Pennant, the Arsenal player who's on loan at Birmingham City, had more than twice the legal limit of alcohol in his blood when he was arrested in Aylesbury. He'd driven a £70,000 Mercedes into a lamppost. Brennan Nichols was in court.
Used to the adoration of thousands of football fans, Jermaine Pennant found himself the focus of the nation's press for all the wrong reasons today. Having admitted drink driving for a second time at Aylesbury Magistrates Court a month ago, he returned to discover his fate.
The court heard how Jermaine Pennant was depressed after not being picked for Arsenal against Newcastle. And so he'd been out drinking, and then in the early hours of the morning he decided to visit his girlfriend in Bristol. The satellite navigation system in the blue Mercedes sports car he was driving brought him here to Aylesbury, and it was driving down this road that he collided with a lamppost. That got caught underneath his car and he was forced to turn into this car park. It's here the police found him, where they said his eyes were glazed over, his speech was slurred and he was making very little sense at all. And when they gave him a breath test, he was found to be 2.5 times over the legal limit.
Pennant came to national attention when, as a 16-year-old, he signed for Arsenal for £2 million from Notts County. But now 22, the winger has found it ever more difficult to break into the Premiership champions' first side and is currently on loan at Birmingham City. The Midlands club says it's standing by the player who was driving without insurance and while still disqualified from drink driving in London a year ago.
After more than an hour of deliberations, the chair of the magistrates, John Jacoby, told Pennant he had no excuse for driving a long planned-out journey with his impaired driving abilities. He said the magistrates were taking into consideration the fact he was near the end of his previous ban and had pleaded guilty at the earliest available opportunity. But the magistrate said he had no choice but to give him a custodial sentence. Pennant was jailed for 3 months and banned for driving for 3 years. His legal team say they'll appeal against that decision, but tonight the Premiership footballer remains behind bars. Brennan Nichols, BBC South Today, Aylesbury.
A new minor injuries unit has opened at Abingdon Hospital. It'll mean that patients from Abingdon, Didcot and Wantage will have the option of going there rather than travelling to the John Ratcliffe Hospital in Oxford. The unit will be open every day from 10 in the morning until 10:30 at night. Almost 2,500 motorists who were convicted of speeding will have their fines refunded and penalty points removed from their driving licences. 2 weeks ago, we told you how Claire Allison from Amesbury successfully challenged her speeding offence. She said there weren't enough warning signs about a temporary speed limit. Today, Wiltshire's Safety Camera Partnership conceded others could now claim money back. Hundreds of cyclists have their bikes stolen in Oxford every year, but who until now has thought of asking the council to compensate them? City Councillor Susanna Pressel has had 2 bikes stolen and believes that it might have been avoided had she been able to find a space in a cycle rack. She's holding the County Council responsible and wants it to foot the bill for her new bike. Alistair Fee takes up the story.
Looking for a safe place to lock up. There may be just over 1,000 racks in Oxford to park your bicycle, but finding one empty isn't always so easy.
I've had 2 bicycles stolen in the last couple of months, and the reason they were stolen is because I couldn't find anywhere secure to leave them. I was looking for a cycle rack and there were very few there and they were all full up, so I had to leave my bikes in an inappropriate place, not securely parked, and I'm afraid that's why they were stolen. So I've come along today to present a bill for my replacement bike to the County Council, since I figure it's their fault that the bikes were stolen.
In a city so fond of cycling, you don't have to look far to see the extent of the problem. But some help is on its way. Oxfordshire County Council has promised to install 260 new secure cycle frames. But is that enough?
We need at least another 1,000 secure cycle parking spaces, which means that cycles won't get stolen. It'll also mean that people won't be leaning bikes against shop windows or against railings, as you can see behind me here. That causes problems for pedestrians, particularly old people. Shopkeepers don't like having bikes left all over their windows either, so it's a win-win situation installing more cycle parking.
Councillor Pressel today took her grievance to the County Council, hoping for some money back for the new bike she's had to buy.
I would suggest that the councillor talks to her insurance company, and that would be the normal process if you have something stolen, rather than the County Council. We can't be held responsible for bicycles that are stolen in the city.
With more than 1,000 cycles stolen from the city centre last year alone, Oxfordshire County Council say they will now assess the need for more permanent places to lock up bikes. Alistair Fee, BBC South Today, Oxford.
Royal Mail says that Oxford's postal service, once the worst in the country, is now close to being on target. Figures show that between April and June last year, an average of 68% of first-class mail was arriving the next day. Workers at the main sorting office had been on strike for part of that period. During October to December, 90% of first-class mail arrived on time, just below the target of 91%. Pupils at an Oxfordshire school that was severely damaged by fire last week will soon be having lessons at a nearby stately home. Marsh Bolton Primary School near Oxford has been closed since the fire devastated the Victorian building on Thursday. It's now been given permission to use the Global Retreat Centre at Newnham Park for 2 weeks, but will have to install temporary classrooms on the school site after that. Here's the weather forecast for you. Sleet and snow overnight with temperatures down to freezing. More wintry showers again tomorrow, breezy and cold with highs of just 4 Celsius, that's 39 degrees Fahrenheit. There's more news on your BBC local radio station in the morning. BBC Three Counties Radio has an interview with the Deputy Prime Minister. That's on 94.7 FM. But that's it from me and the late team here. Huw Edwards has the national headlines.
Main news tonight, the BBC has uncovered evidence that asylum seekers held in a British detention centre are subjected to violence and racial abuse. Undercover reporters witnessed mistreatment of immigrants. The company which runs the centre has suspended 15 workers from frontline duties. And at a special conference in London, Tony Blair says that the foundation stones of a Palestinian state have been laid. That's it from all of us here on the 10 o'clock team. Have a good night.
Good evening. When it snowed in London earlier on today, it was the 11th day in a row we've had snow in the capital, and we're not done yet. I think tomorrow we may well make it around a dozen. More snow to come, particularly across southeastern parts of England and East Anglia through tomorrow. An increasingly wintry flavour, maybe a sleet in the morning, but turning more and more to snow as the day goes on, so there is the threat of further travel problems. Now, we had some problems with snow earlier on in the day today across the central lowlands, but most of what we've seen through the day today has been, well, basically a mixture of rain with some sleet here and there. It's all been circulating around an area of low pressure, and these weather fronts still bringing wet weather across the southeast overnight tonight, and this weather front, as it pushes southwards, bringing some sleet and snow across the hills of northern England at the moment, but probably turning a bit more to snow as it pushes down across parts of the Midlands and into East Wales by the end of the night. So that could be a problem for drivers. Ice, I think, a problem also through the morning rush hours. Temperatures again overnight tonight fall quite widely down to freezing. So yet again a cold start to Wednesday. A lot of cloud across the south with a real wintry mix of sleet and snow here. One or two wintry showers hitting eastern parts of England, and the snow showers continuing across northern and eastern parts of Scotland. But with some shelter, I think western Scotland should be a place for plenty of sunshine through the day, as will Northern Ireland. Across the rest of England and Wales, well, some sunny spells, yes, but I think a few more wintry showers likely. And across that southeastern corner, I think that's where we're looking for the thick cloud through the day, and increasingly the sleet and snow becoming more and more of a problem by the afternoon. Feeling bitterly cold here also, with the winds coming in from the northeast. Temperatures across that southeastern corner no higher than 1 or 2 degrees. Elsewhere a little bit warmer than that, but still temperatures struggling 5 or 6, I think the top values. Still cold on Thursday, but for most of us Thursday a dry and a bright day. Possibly still some sleet and snow in the far southeast at first. That will be pulling away. Maybe 1 or 2 wintry showers for eastern parts of England, but for most of England and Wales dry and bright. Possibly a bright start across Scotland and Northern Ireland, but things will change here with cloud, sleet and snow edging in on this weather front. That will dive southwards during Thursday night and through Friday to bring a lot of cloud across England and Wales and Northern Ireland during Friday. Again, a bit of sleet and snow likely, mainly up over the hills. And then we'll see more wintry showers coming in across Scotland. Say winter is not done yet. Still more cloud and a cold wind with perhaps some more sleet and snow across the south as we head through into Saturday. So staying cold for the rest of this week. A very good night to you.
Up next on BBC One, the rulings on tonight's disputes in You Be the Judge.
Asylum seekers and immigrants have experienced violence, abuse and intimidation after they arrived in Britain.
Smacking the faces, nobody's looking. We've had 7 kinds now.
Detention Undercover, the real story, exposes the culture of racial abuse at the heart of Britain's immigration system, tomorrow at 9 on BBC One.
For 100 years, one place has sung America's story.
Business, business, business. There's no business like no business like no business.
Broadway, the history of the American musical, continues Thursday at 9 on BBC 4.
When I think back to my childhood, there was such privilege. It's not, it's a prison. Would you mind if I expressed it in the form of dance?
Dance?
Outrageous! A man like that with a nice solo, and I thought, he's going to pull that frighteningly small, you know what I mean?
I've got someone else coming in a minute.
All right, come on, move your leg, come on.
Sessions continue for Paul Whitehouse and Chris Langham. Help, Sunday at 9:30 on BBC Two.
In half an hour, the realities of military life continue in Soldier, Husband, Daughter, Dad. Now, BBC One, what have you decided?